episodes. Will you recommend the Job Guide 360 interview guide to prospective job seekers?
Sure, I will. The guide is detailed and very comprehensive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're putting on our digital hazmat suits, you could say. We're wading deep into a really critical, high-stakes role in cybersecurity malware analysis. We've gathered a massive stack of expert sources, mostly from top-tier interview prep materials. Think of this as the ultimate cheat sheet. It's your shortcut to understanding the essential tools, the foundational skills, and crucially, the critical thinking needed to dissect malicious software and defend systems.
That's a great way to put it. Our mission today is really to cut through all that noise, all the information overload. We want to give you those operational insights that show you understand not just what malware is, but how to actually take it apart and neutralize it. Understanding these concepts, that's absolutely key to defending valuable information and systems. It proves you know your stuff.
Okay, let's jump right in then. If you're going to fight a threat, you first have to know its nature, right? But let's skip the dry textbook definitions. For a modern analyst, why is knowing that core taxonomy, virus, worm, Trojan, or why is that the absolute first thing you need to nail down?
Because it totally dictates your immediate defensive strategy. It's not just about defining what a virus is, it's about the consequence for your analysis. If you identify a worm, for instance, worms are self-replicating. They exploit network vulnerabilities. So your immediate priority, it shifts right to perimeter and network containment. The threat is rapid, autonomous spread.
Right, rapid spread. And the counterpoint to that is the Trojan horse, the one that deceives you.
Exactly. The Trojan relies purely on tricking the user, social engineering. It doesn't self-replicate like a worm. So your response becomes more about endpoint monitoring, data loss prevention, and maybe even some aggressive user education. The mechanism, whether it needs user interaction or exploits a service, that tells you the vector. And the speed of your required countermeasure, that's essential for prioritizing correctly.
Got it. So knowing those differences helps develop the right strategies. And once you've quarantined that sample, you've got to tear it apart. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. We're talking about reverse engineering. What makes this skill so critical for breaking down sophisticated code?
Oh, it's absolutely critical because malware authors deliberately hide their intent. They obfuscate. They don't want us finding the core functionality, especially how they talk back to their controllers, the C2 command and control server. Reverse engineering is that process, deconstructing the binary to understand how it works, identify those hiding techniques, and spot vulnerabilities we can use for remediation.
And you obviously can't reverse engineer without the right tools. Our sources mention two main types of analysis, static and dynamic. Let's start with static analysis. That's looking at the code without running it, right?
That's it, exactly. For static analysis, the foundational tools are things like disassemblers and decompilers. Think IDEA Pro, Ghidra. These are indispensable, really. They convert that raw binary code into assembly language. This lets the analyst see the structure, map out how it runs, the control flow, and spot suspicious functions or patterns. It's kind of like doing an anatomy study on a non-living specimen. We also use tools like VirusTotal for quick checks against known signatures and strings. Useful first step.
Okay. And then once you've gathered some initial intel, you move to dynamic analysis.
Yeah.
Actually running the malware, but carefully.
Absolutely. Dynamic analysis is where you watch it in action. We rely heavily on debuggers here. Tools like OllyDbg by 64DBG. These let you execute the code step by step, line by line. You can set breakpoints, watch every change in memory in the registers. This is how you often uncover those hidden functionalities or maybe anti-debugging tricks the malware uses to try and stop you.
And the environment is key, of course. You need a safe space to do this.
Oh, definitely. We use dedicated sandboxes. Cuckoo Sandbox is a popular one to execute the threats safely. And we also use monitoring suites. The site's internal suite is fantastic for this. Process Monitor, Process Explorer are essential tools. They let you analyze runtime activities, track everything from file system changes, registry modifications, network connections. You need to see every single move that malware makes.
Right, tracking everything. Since we're talking code, let's touch on what the attackers are actually building this stuff with. Which programming languages are most common on the dark side?
Well, C++ is still the bedrock for a lot of sophisticated malware. It's versatile, allows low-level system interaction, which attackers love, and assembly language. It's still around. Used when attackers need that absolute fine-grained control over hardware, makes the code incredibly hard to detect sometimes.
But we're seeing newer trends too, right?
Yeah.
Especially with scripting languages.
Yes, definitely. Python has become increasingly popular. It's simple, has huge library support, makes it really good for quickly developing proof-of-concept exploits, automating tasks, or building specific utility malware.
And analysts can turn those same skills around for defense, right? Being proficient in Python or PowerShell isn't just a nice to have anymore.
No, it's crucial. It's a huge professional requirement now. Analysts use Python all the time to automate repetitive tasks. Think parsing massive log files, pulling out relevant IOCs, generating reports quickly. And PowerShell, being native to Windows, is often used for custom tool creation, data collection during incident response. It leverages the environment itself. Scripting just dramatically speeds up the entire analysis and response cycle.
That efficiency leads us perfectly into this ongoing battle, the cat and mouse game. Malware authors really want to avoid the kind of scrutiny we've just described. So let's talk about some common evasion techniques they use.
Okay, yeah. The first big hurdle for us is often code obfuscation. This just means deliberately messing up the code's structure to make it hard for security tools and for human analysts to understand. This can involve encryption, packing the code, polymorphism, where the malware literally changes its appearance with each infection, and something called control flow manipulation.
Wait, hang on. Control flow manipulation. That sounds pretty advanced. Can you break that down a bit?
It is, yeah. Think of a program's normal execution path, like a clear roadmap. Control flow manipulation intentionally adds confusing detours. It might insert loops that don't really do anything, or jumps to code sections that look important but aren't, or false paths that never actually execute. The goal is to make that map unreadable, so when you're stepping through the code in a debugger, you keep hitting these dead ends or confusing loops. It's designed to waste your time and hide the real malicious instructions.
Wow, okay. That's clever. And then there are even deeper stealth mechanisms like rootkits.
Right. Rootkits are all about long-term hidden presence. They hide by intercepting and modifying really low-level system functions, the APIs. They often operate right down in the kernel mode of the operating system. Because they're so deep in the system, they're extremely difficult for typical antivirus software, which runs in user space, to even see.
And maybe the ultimate trick involves messing with the analysis environment itself. Sandbox evasion.
Exactly. This is a big one. Sophisticated malware is often programmed to check if it's running inside one of these isolated analysis environments. It might look for signs of virtualization, specific virtual hardware configurations, or even the lack of normal human activity, like no mouse movements or no recent documents being opened. If it thinks it's in a sandbox, it might just stay dormant, do nothing malicious, or run some harmless code instead, all to avoid revealing its true purpose during analysis.
That evasion tactic really highlights why analysts need to understand malware persistence. If the machine gets rebooted, how does the malware make sure it comes back?
Persistence is key for the attacker. There are many ways, but two major common methods stand out. The first is registry modification. Malware often alters the Windows registry, for example, adding entries to the common run keys or other startup locations. This ensures the malicious code executes automatically every time the system boots up.
Simple but effective. And the second method is even stealthier, you mentioned. It uses legitimate system functions.
That's right. Using scheduled tasks, malware authors can create new tasks or modify existing ones within the Windows task scheduler. They set their payload to run at specific times, maybe daily, or triggered by common events like a user logging in. This not only keeps them present on the system, but allows them to schedule activities like phoning home for new instructions or exfiltrating stolen data periodically.
So let's say the worst happens, a breach is suspected or confirmed. What are those concrete signs an analyst looks for? What are the immediate indicators of compromise? IOCs.
IOCs are basically the forensic evidence, the fingerprints left behind. Analysts look for several things. Unusual network traffic is a big one, connections going out to known malicious IP addresses or unexpected amounts of data leaving the network, suggesting exfiltration. Also, looking for unauthorized processes running on the system, processes that shouldn't be there. And, critically, those suspicious registry or file system modifications we just talked about, the ones that suggest persistence mechanisms have been set up.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to the more advanced challenges, the kind of stuff that really separates the competent analyst from the true expert. Let's start with the massive challenge of fileless malware. How on earth do you analyze something that barely touches the hard drive, something that uses legitimate tools?
Yeah, fileless malware is a tough one. Traditional signature-based detection often fails because there's no actual malicious file on disk to scan. It lives mostly in memory, maybe leveraging native tools like PowerShell, WMI, or using memory injection techniques. The solution really requires a fundamental shift in approach. You have to lean heavily on behavioral analysis and what we call heuristic techniques.
Okay, heuristic techniques. Can you unpack that a little?
Sure. Heuristics means we sort of stop looking for an exact match, a known signature for a piece of bad code. Instead, we look for patterns of behavior that are highly suspicious or abnormal. We monitor processes for unusual activity. For example, why is PowerShell suddenly running complex encrypted commands? Or why is a normally benign system service trying to open a network connection and send data out? We're analyzing the intent and the behavior of the activity rather than just matching the code itself.
That makes sense. It also brings up a really critical point about crisis management, zero-day exploit analysis. So imagine this scenario. You're handed a memory dump, maybe a network capture, and a sample. You quickly realize it's a 0 day, it's unknown, it's actively spreading. What do those first crucial 60 minutes of analysis look like?
It's absolutely a race against time, intense pressure. The very first step, honestly, even before deep diving into the code, is isolation. You have to contain the threat, stop the bleeding, isolate all affected and potentially affected systems immediately. Simultaneously, you're grabbing data like crazy, more memory dumps, system logs, network traffic, trying to get more samples of the malicious code. Then the reverse engineering starts, but it's focused. You need to quickly figure out the vulnerability being exploited if possible and the basic functionality. What does it do? Your goal in that first hour isn't some polished, perfect report. It's about generating the absolutely critical IOCs, IP addresses, file hashes, registry keys, and maybe a temporary mitigation strategy for the security operations team. Fast.
That kind of rapid response, it can't happen in isolation, right? It must rely heavily on threat intelligence.
Oh, absolutely. Threat intelligence provides vital context. It tells us about emerging threats globally, which attacker groups might be targeting our industry or organization, what tools and techniques, TTPs, they typically use. This context helps prioritize. If a new sample looks similar to something a known dangerous group uses, it goes to the top of the pile. It also helps connect the dots, maybe identifying similarities between a new, scary 0 day and attacks or malware families we've seen before.
Good point. And before we wrap up the technical side, let's talk professional practice. If you're handling live malware daily, you have to be incredibly careful about your own security. How do analysts protect their own systems, their operational environment?
Yeah, operational security, or OPSCT, is paramount. Strict isolation is the golden rule. This usually means working exclusively within isolated virtual machines, or even on dedicated physical hardware that's completely air-gapped, or on a separate network segment from the main corporate network. For malware that tries to call home, analysts often use special network setups to sinkhole or redirect that C2 traffic safely so they can observe it without risk. And of course, strong access controls, keeping analysis tools and systems fully patched. It's basic hygiene, but absolutely essential to prevent accidental infection or contamination.
And just as important as the technical work is documenting it and sharing it effectively. Technical accuracy is vital, but so is clear communication, right?
Absolutely. You can do the best analysis in the world, but if you can't communicate the findings effectively, it loses impact. Good documentation usually starts with a clear, concise executive summary. What happened? What's the risk? What needs to be done now? That's for the decision makers. Then you dive into the technical details, the malware's behavior, how it got in, the infection vector, all the IOCs you found, and crucially, specific actionable mitigation recommendations. And using shared platforms like a wiki or a threat intel platform for collaboration is key. It ensures the whole team stays informed during an ongoing incident.
Okay, finally looking ahead. What emerging trends are really posing the biggest challenges right now? We mentioned fileless threats, but what else is keeping analysts up at night?
Well, beyond the continued challenge of fileless malware, the trend that's probably most concerning is the rise of AI-powered malware. We're starting to see attackers experimenting with leveraging machine learning concepts to improve their malware's evasion capabilities, maybe even its target selection. Imagine malware that can actively adapt its techniques based on the specific security defenses it encounters on a target system. That forces analysts to rely even less on static signatures and more on that dynamic, adaptive behavioral analysis we talked about. It's a scary prospect.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you, the listener, the aspiring or current analyst? We've covered a lot. The fundamentals, like why distinguishing a worm from a Trojan matters analytically. We've talked tools at ePro, Ghidra, debuggers. We've discussed attack tactics like obfuscation and persistence, and looked at advanced challenges like 0 days, fileless threats, and now AI-powered attacks.
And I think the core value, the real essence of a great analyst, often boils down to one question. You will face situations where you don't have all the information. You'll get a piece of malware, maybe partial data, and you won't immediately understand its full purpose or capability. So the real question is, what do you do when you don't know the answer?
That really is the ultimate test, isn't it?
It is. And the essential response involves a few things. Prioritizing resourcefulness, knowing where to look, who to ask, seeking external expertise if needed, immediately isolating the threat to mitigate risk while you figure it out, and adapting your analysis techniques, trying different approaches until you understand the full scope. The job isn't really about having all the answers memorized. It's about having the methodology, the persistence, and the adaptability to solve complex problems under pressure and uncertainty.
That adaptability sounds like the defining skill for cybersecurity going forward. Definitely keep an eye on those AI-powered threats. Behavioral analysis seems like it will remain the critical front line. Thank you for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.